Captain G1 stared at the view screen with growing dread. The alien ships hung in space like massive predators, each one 20 times larger than her vessel. The UHSV Resilience suddenly felt very small and fragile. "They're hailing us," her communications officer said quietly. Everyone on the bridge held their breath. The holographic display flickered to life. A massive reptilian creature appeared, its scales gleaming under harsh lighting. The being stood at least 3 meters tall, with muscles that rippled beneath armored skin. Its eyes were cold and calculating. This was Supreme Commander Valkresh of the Vorix Empire. "Humans," Valkresh said, his voice a deep rumble that made the speakers vibrate. "You are now subjects of the Vorix Empire. You have one of your planetary rotations to surrender all weapons and submit to our rule. You will also provide 30% of your population as workers for our empire." Commander Tai Yang stepped forward beside G1. His hand instinctively moved toward his sidearm, though he knew it was useless. "And if we refuse?" he asked. The alien commander laughed. It was a horrible sound that echoed through the bridge. "Then we will erase your species from existence. We have done this to 47 civilizations before you. Your primitive weapons cannot harm us. Your ships cannot outrun us. Resistance is pointless." He leaned closer to the camera. "We have conquered 847 star systems. You are nothing." The transmission ended abruptly. G1 looked at her crew. Fear was written on every face. They had just encountered humanity's first alien species and it wanted to enslave them. "Send everything back to Earth," G1 ordered. "Every sensor reading, every word of that transmission. Tell them we need help." The message would take hours to reach Earth, hours that felt like an eternity. On Earth, President Hyunwoo stood in the Emergency Command Center, surrounded by military advisors and scientists. The Vorix ultimatum had arrived. The room was silent as everyone processed what they had just heard. General Minji was the first to speak. She was a hard woman who had spent 40 years in the military. "We cannot fight them conventionally. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. One of their ships could destroy our entire fleet. So we surrender?" a counselor asked. "We give them our people as slaves?" "No," President Hyunwoo said firmly. "We will never surrender our freedom. Not to anyone." Dr. Seojun cleared his throat. He was an old man now with white hair and tired eyes, but those eyes still held sharp intelligence. "Mr. President, there is something you should know. Something we have kept secret for 50 years. Everyone turned to look at him. Seojun took a deep breath. "When we first detected alien radio signals half a century ago, we knew this day might come. We knew that whoever was out there might be hostile, so we started a secret project to develop weapons specifically designed to fight enemies with superior technology." He pulled up files on the main screen. Technical diagrams and test results filled the display. "We call it Project Prometheus. We have been preparing for this exact scenario for decades." A young officer named Yuna studied the data carefully. She had graduated top of her class in military strategy and had been promoted faster than anyone in history. Now she understood why. "These weapons," she said slowly, "they do not fight fair." "No," Seojun agreed. "They do not. The Vorix expect us to fight like them, with massive fleets in direct confrontation. We will do the opposite. We will use stealth, sabotage, biological weapons, cyber warfare, and psychological tactics. We will make them afraid." General Minji looked uncomfortable. "Some of these weapons violate every rule of warfare we have established. Using biological agents targeting civilian infrastructure, deception on this scale. If we do this, we cross a line. The Vorix already crossed that line when they threatened to exterminate us," Yuna said. Her voice was cold and clear. "They gave us 2 choices, kneel or die. I say we give them a third option. We show them what happens when you threaten humanity." President Hyunwoo looked around the room. He saw fear, anger, and determination on the faces of his advisors. They all knew what this decision meant. If they fought and lost, humanity would be extinct. If they won, they would have to live with the knowledge of what they had done to achieve victory. "We vote," he said. "All in favor of authorizing Project Prometheus and rejecting the Vorix ultimatum?" Every hand went up. "Every single one. Then it is decided," President Hyunwoo said. "General Minji, begin mobilization. Dr. Seojun, activate all Prometheus assets. Lieutenant Yuna, you will coordinate our strategic response." He paused, then added quietly, May God forgive us for what we are about to do. 12 hours later, Earth broadcast its response to the Vorax ultimatum. The message was simple and direct. Just 3 words that would echo through galactic history. Come and take it. Aboard the Vorax flagship, Supreme Commander Valkresh received the transmission. He stared at it for a moment, then began to laugh. His officers joined in. The idea that these primitive creatures would dare to resist was amusing. Such bravery from such weak beings, Valkresh said. Very well. We will teach them the price of defiance. Order the fleet to Earth. We will make an example of them that will frighten the galaxy for 1,000 years. The Vorax ships began moving toward the inner solar system. 300 massive warships carrying 2 million soldiers. They had never been defeated. They had never even been challenged. They expected to crush humanity in less than 3 days. What they did not know was that humanity had been watching them. Hidden sensors tracked every ship. Advanced computers analyzed every move. And deep in the asteroid belt, weapons that had been waiting for 50 years slowly came online. On the Resilience, Captain Jiwan received new orders from Earth. She read them twice to make sure she understood correctly. Then she looked at Commander Taiyang. We are not running, she told her crew. We are going to fight. Not the way they expect. Not with honor or glory. We are going to fight dirty, and we are going to win. Taiyang smiled grimly. What are our orders? We are going to show the Vorax something they have never seen before, Jiwan said. We are going to show them what happens when you threaten the survival of the human race. We will do whatever it takes, no matter how terrible, no matter the cost. The crew of the Resilience prepared for war, not the kind of war the Vorax understood, not battles between fleets with rules and honor. This would be a war of survival, a war where the only rule was to live while making the enemy die, a war where humanity would reveal its true nature. The Vorax thought humans were weak. They thought humans would be easy to conquer. They were about to learn a lesson that would change the galaxy forever. They were about to learn that humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and countless disasters by doing one thing better than any other species. Humans knew how to survive, and they would teach that lesson in blood and fire. The Vorax fleet moved confidently through the solar system. Supreme Commander Valkresh sat in his command chair, watching the primitive human defenses on his tactical display. Orbital platforms with crude kinetic weapons, missile batteries that would barely scratch Vorax shields. He felt nothing but contempt. Do not even bother with evasive maneuvers, he told his fleet captains. Let them waste their ammunition. It will make the conquest faster. That was his first mistake. The first impacts came from weapons the Vorax had not detected. Tungsten rods, each weighing several tons, had been accelerating from hidden platforms in the asteroid belt for weeks. They hit the Vorax ships at 30% of light speed. At that velocity, they did not need explosives. Physics alone was devastating. The kinetic energy released by each impact was equivalent to multiple nuclear weapons. Shields designed to stop energy weapons were useless against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. 15 Vorax capital ships simply ceased to exist, torn apart in milliseconds. Debris spread across space like shrapnel, damaging nearby vessels. Valkresh jumped from his chair, roaring in fury. Find those launch platforms. Destroy them immediately. The Vorax fleet scattered and began hunting for the hidden weapons. They found them within an hour and destroyed every platform. Valkresh felt satisfied. The humans had gotten one lucky hit, but now their secret weapons were gone. That was his second mistake. The platforms were only the opening move. Commander Daehyun led a squadron of small, fast attack ships out from behind one of Jupiter's moons. His vessels looked like civilian freighters on Vorax sensors. They moved slowly, broadcasting distress signals. The Vorax ignored them, focusing on regrouping their fleet. When the human ships were close enough, they dropped their disguises. Missile pods opened, drone bays activated. Electronic warfare systems came online. In seconds, they transformed from helpless merchants into deadly weapons. Hundreds of missiles streaked toward the Vorax formation. But these were not normal missiles. They were smart weapons, each with its own AI guidance system. When the Vorax shot down the first wave, the second wave learned from it. When they countered the second wave, the third adapted again. The missiles were learning faster than the Vorax could respond. Drone swarms followed the missiles. Thousands of small craft, each barely larger than a person, swarmed around Vorax ships like angry insects. They latched onto hull plates and sensor arrays. Some carried explosives. Others released electromagnetic pulses. Many simply blocked sensors, making the massive warships blind. "This is not warfare," Valkresh screamed at his officers. "This is cowardice. These insects refuse to face us in proper battle." His tactical officer looked pale. "Commander, we are receiving reports from multiple ships. Their weapon systems are malfunctioning. Firing solutions are targeting friendly vessels. It appears to be a computer virus." Major Hygiene smiled as she watched the chaos from her stealth shuttle. Her boarding team had infiltrated a Vorik supply ship 3 days ago. They had planted a virus in its navigation computer before escaping. The virus was designed to spread silently through the Vorik's fleet network, waiting for the right moment. That moment had come. 40 infected ships suddenly received false targeting data. Their weapons locked onto nearby friendly vessels and fired. Vorik's ships began destroying each other while their crews frantically tried to regain control. The confusion lasted only minutes, but the damage was done. 20 more ships were destroyed or crippled by friendly fire. Trust between ship captains evaporated. They began spreading out, refusing to maintain formation, fearing their neighbors might be infected. This was exactly what Lieutenant Yuna had planned. Divided enemies were weak enemies, but humanity was not finished. Dr. Seojun had saved the most controversial weapon for last. The pathogen had been engineered specifically for Vorik's biology. Human scientists had spent decades studying every alien microbe they could find, learning the principles of xenobiology. When they finally encountered the Voriks, they already knew how to design a disease that would devastate reptilian biochemistry while leaving humans untouched. It spread through contact with contaminated supplies that human raiders had deliberately left behind during their attacks. The Voriks, focused on combat, did not notice the infection until it was too late. The first cases appeared within days. Vorik soldiers began suffering from respiratory failure and hemorrhaging. Their medical facilities designed only for treating combat injuries were overwhelmed. The disease spread rapidly through the cramped confines of warships. Sergeant Yunji had volunteered for the most dangerous mission of all. She allowed herself to be captured by a Vorik's patrol, knowing she carried a dormant strain of the pathogen. The Voriks threw her in the brig of their flagship alongside other human prisoners. 36 hours later, the pathogen activated. It spread through the flagship's ventilation system like wildfire. Within a week, the vessel was a floating plague ship. Valkresh was forced to abandon his command and transfer to another ship, watching in horror as his flagship drifted full of dying crew members. Yunji did not survive. She had known she would not. But her sacrifice infected the entire Vorik's command structure, spreading panic and death through their leadership. The Vorik's empire had never encountered biological warfare. Their culture considered it beneath contempt, the weapon of cowards who could not win through strength. They had no protocols for dealing with it, no experience treating it, no psychological preparation for the fear it created. Morale collapsed faster than the disease spread. Vorik's warriors who had faced battle without fear now refused to serve on the same ships as infected comrades. Captains abandoned their positions. Soldiers deserted. The fleet began falling apart not from military defeat, but from terror of an invisible enemy. Captain Jiwan broadcast a message that every Vorik's ship received. Her voice was calm but cold. "You came to our home and demanded we kneel. You threatened to exterminate us if we refused. You measured your greatness by the civilizations you destroyed, but we are not like them. We are survivors, and survivors do whatever is necessary to live. You are predators, but every predator eventually meets something more dangerous. You have met us." The psychological impact was devastating. The Voriks had conquered through intimidation and superior force. They expected enemies to either submit or die fighting honorably. Humanity did neither. Humans fought with invisible weapons, with deception, with disease, with tactics that the Vorik's honor code could not comprehend. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Voriks experienced doubt. What if they had underestimated this species? What if humans were not weak but simply different? What if their own arrogance had led them into a trap? 3 weeks after entering the solar system, Supreme Commander Valkresh gave the order to retreat. Of his original 300 ships, fewer than 180 remained combat effective. Thousands of his warriors were dead or dying. His fleet was scattered, demoralized, and terrified. He had not lost to superior technology. He had not been defeated in glorious battle. He had been picked apart by an enemy that refused to fight fair, that used every dirty trick imaginable. that valued survival above honor. As the Vorax fleet limped away from Earth, Valkresh sent a final message to his emperor. We have encountered something unexpected. These humans are not warriors. They are something worse. They are survivors, and they will do absolutely anything to continue surviving. On Earth, there was no celebration. President Hyunwoo stood in the command center, surrounded by his advisors. They had won, but the cost was heavy. They had used weapons that violated every principle of honorable warfare. They had spread disease. They had engaged in sabotage and deception. They had sacrificed people like Sergeant Yoonji. General Minji looked at the casualty reports. We have become something terrible today. Yes, President Hyunwoo agreed quietly. But we are still here, and that is what matters. We will deal with who we have become later. Right now we must prepare. The Vorax will return, and next time they will be ready for our tricks. He was right. In the throne room of the Vorax Empire, Emperor Draxus listened to Valkresh's report with growing rage. No species had ever humiliated the Vorax like this. No one had ever forced them to retreat. The Empire's reputation was built on absolute dominance. If word spread that humans had defeated them, other subjugated species might rebel. The Emperor made his decision. Mobilize the Grand Armada. Every ship, every warrior. We will crush these humans completely. We will use planet-killer weapons if necessary. The example we make of them will echo through the galaxy for 10,000 years. He leaned forward on his throne, eyes burning with fury. Humanity will learn that no one defies the Vorax Empire and survives. Admiral Junho watched the approaching armada through the long-range sensors. 10,000 ships, the entire military might of the Vorax Empire. He had spent 40 years in the Navy, had seen countless battles, but nothing compared to this. Against such overwhelming force, Earth's entire defense fleet of 200 ships was meaningless. How long until they reach Mars? He asked quietly. 72 hours, his tactical officer replied. They are not even trying to hide. They want us to see them. They want us to be afraid. Junho nodded slowly. It is working. I am afraid. Any sane person would be. He turned to his communications officer. Connect me with President Hyunwoo. In the presidential bunker deep beneath the Earth's surface, Hyunwoo looked older than he had weeks ago. The burden of leadership during wartime had aged him. Admiral, give me your honest assessment. We cannot win this battle, sir, Junho said flatly. Our tricks worked once because they were unexpected. The Vorax are prepared now. They know how we fight. They will not make the same mistakes again. Hyunwoo closed his eyes. Then we begin Project Exodus. Evacuate as many civilians as possible to the colony ships. They can hide in the outer systems, maybe find new worlds beyond Vorax space. And Earth? Juno asked. Earth makes its last stand, the president said. We buy time for the evacuation. Every hour we delay them means more people survive. The Vorax hit Mars first. Colonel Junho commanded the defense of Olympus Station, the largest military installation on the Red Planet. He had 50,000 Marines and limited orbital support. Intelligence reported the Vorax were sending 500,000 shock troops. The math was simple and terrible. Humanity was outnumbered 10-1 by enemies that were physically superior, better armed, and motivated by fury over their previous defeat. Private Soman checked her rifle for the 10th time. She was 19 years old and had joined the military only 8 months ago. She had never imagined she would be fighting for the survival of her species. Around her, other soldiers prepared in grim silence. Remember the training, Junho told his troops. The Vorax are bigger and stronger than us in open combat. Do not give them open combat. Use the tunnels. Use the confined spaces. Make them fight on our terms. Every corridor is a kill zone. Every room is rigged to explode. Make them pay for every meter. The Vorax landing began like a meteor storm. Assault pods crashed into the Martian surface by the thousands. Soman watched through her helmet display as the enemy emerged from their pods. They were enormous, heavily armored, and moved with predatory grace. Fear tried to choke her, but she pushed it down. Here they come, someone whispered over the radio. The battle for Olympus Station lasted 18 days. It was brutal beyond description. The Vorax pushed forward with overwhelming force, but humanity fought with desperate ferocity. Every tunnel became a meat grinder. Every intersection was defended until the last soldier fell. Soman's squad held a critical choke point for 18 hours straight. When ammunition ran out, they fought with grenades. When grenades were gone, they used combat knives. When knives broke, they fought with tools, rocks, their bare hands, anything to delay the enemy for one more minute. The Vorix had never encountered an enemy that fought like this. They expected soldiers who valued their lives, who would surrender when defeat was certain. Instead, they found humans who would rather die than give up ground. Every position had to be taken by force. Every room was paid for in blood. Colonel Junho died on the 17th day, defending the evacuation tunnels that led to the civilian shelters. His last order was simple: do not let them through. His soldiers obeyed. The Vorix reached those tunnels only to find them collapsed and booby-trapped. The civilians had escaped. When Mars finally fell, the Vorix had won, but the victory was hollow. They had lost over 200,000 warriors taking a single installation. The survivors were shaken. They had expected weak resistance. Instead, they had fought the most vicious close-quarters battle in Vorix history. Emperor Draxus watched the reports with growing unease. Mars should have fallen in hours. Instead, it had taken weeks and cost him a significant portion of his invasion force. And Mars was just one planet. Earth would be even worse. The Grand Armada moved into Earth orbit. President Hyunwoo stood in the command bunker, watching the tactical display. 10,000 ships surrounded his homeworld. There was no escape. No more tricks that would save them. This was the end. Dr. Seojin entered the room carrying a data tablet. He looked haunted. "Mr. President, I need to show you something. It is Project Prometheus's final option, the weapon we hoped we would never need to use." General Minji reviewed the specifications and went pale. "This is insane. If we use this weapon, we risk damaging space-time itself. The consequences could be catastrophic." "What is it?" Hyunwoo asked. Seojin explained in a quiet voice. "We call it the Cascade device. It creates a chain reaction in exotic matter that essentially tears a hole in the fabric of space. Everything caught in the effect ceases to exist at the quantum level. Matter, energy, information, all of it simply vanishes. No explosion, no debris, just absence." "How large is the effect?" Hyunwoo asked. "At maximum yield, roughly 5,000 kilometers in radius," Seojin said. "Enough to eliminate the core of their fleet in Earth orbit. But the device must be manually activated at close range to ensure it targets the right location. And there is another problem." He paused. "The effect leaves a permanent scar in space-time. We do not fully understand the long-term consequences." Minji shook her head. "We cannot use this. If we deploy a weapon that damages the very fabric of reality, we become the monsters we are fighting against." Lieutenant Yuna spoke up. She had been quiet until now. "The Vorix gave us two choices, kneel or die. We chose a third option, win. Winning means being willing to go further than they will. It means doing what must be done, no matter how terrible." "At what cost?" Minji demanded. "What do we become if we use this weapon?" "We become the species that survives," Yuna replied coldly. "History is written by survivors, General. No one remembers the extinct species that maintained their principles all the way to their graves." President Hyunwoo looked at each of them in turn. He thought about the millions already dead. He thought about the civilians fleeing on colony ships. He thought about what humanity would become if he gave this order. Then he thought about what would happen if he did not. "Activate the Cascade device," he said quietly. "May whatever God exists forgive us." Captain Minsu volunteered to pilot the stealth ship. He was 43 years old, with two daughters who had already evacuated on colony ships. He knew what this mission meant. There was no escape pod on the ship, no recovery plan. This was a one-way trip. His final transmission to Earth was brief. "For everyone who cannot fight back. For everyone who has ever been told they had no choice. For my daughters. This is for all of you." The stealth ship slipped through the Vorix fleet like a ghost. Their sensors, designed to detect large threats, missed the small vessel completely. Minsu guided it to the exact center of their formation, where the flagship and command vessels clustered together. He thought about his daughters one last time. Then he activated the device. Reality screamed. The Cascade device created a sphere of non-existence that expanded at nearly the speed of light. Everything it touched simply stopped being. 4,000 Vorix warships vanished in 3.7 seconds. No explosions, no wreckage. They were just gone, erased from existence as if they had never been. The remaining Vorix ships fled in absolute panic. They had witnessed something impossible, something that violated their understanding of reality. Half their fleet had been deleted from existence. Fear overwhelmed their discipline. The formation shattered as ships desperately tried to escape. On Earth, there was no celebration. The command center was silent as they watched the sensors. The Vorix were retreating. Humanity had won. But the price was terrible. Physicist Nari studied the readings with growing horror. The effect has not completely dissipated. There is a permanent anomaly in that region of space. Navigation systems are malfunctioning. The gravitational readings are wrong. We have scarred space-time itself. Commander Taeyang stared at the data. What have we done? He whispered. President Hyunwoo buried his face in his hands. They had won the battle. They had saved humanity from extinction. But they had used a weapon so terrible that it damaged reality itself. They had crossed a line that should never be crossed. We are alive, General Minji said quietly. But what have we become? No one had an answer. The Vorix fleet was fleeing. The immediate threat was over. But humanity would have to live with what they had done. They had proven they would do absolutely anything to survive. And the galaxy was watching. 3 weeks after the Vorix retreat, the Earth Defense Council met to decide humanity's next move. The debate was fierce. Some argued Earth should fortify and prepare for the next attack. Others wanted to pursue the defeated enemy. General Minji presented the conservative position. We barely survived. Our tricks worked because they were unexpected. If we pursue them into their territory, we give away our home advantage. We should rebuild and strengthen our defenses. Lieutenant Yuna stood and faced the council. She was young, but the war had made her voice carry weight. The Vorix culture respects only strength. If we stop now, we are prey that got lucky. They will return with better preparation. But if we take the fight to them, if we hunt them to their homeworld, we become the predator. They will never threaten us again. President Hyunwoo listened carefully. You are suggesting we invade the Vorix Empire? I'm suggesting we finish what they started, Yuna replied. They came to our home to destroy us. We must go to theirs and prove we are not victims. We are threats. The vote was close, but the decision was made. Humanity would go on the offensive. Admiral Jiwon was promoted and given command of a battle group consisting of 50 ships. It was the entire remaining Earth fleet. Their mission was clear: demonstrate that humanity could bring war to the enemy's doorstep. The journey to Vorix space would take 6 months. During that time, Engineer Bora and her team worked tirelessly on captured Vorix technology. They reverse-engineered their communication systems, their identification protocols, and their encryption methods. If we can make our ships look like Vorix vessels on their sensors, we can move through their territory freely, Bora explained to Admiral Jiwon. They will not know we are enemies until we strike. The strategy worked perfectly. When the human fleet entered Vorix territory, they broadcast false identification codes. Vorix stations saw them as a patrol fleet returning from distant assignments. No one questioned their presence. Commander Taeyang led the first raid. His squadron approached a major Vorix supply depot, broadcasting routine cargo manifests. When they docked, his Marines poured out and seized control of the station within minutes. They planted explosives throughout the facility and escaped before the Vorix even realized they had been attacked. The supply depot exploded, taking with it enough ammunition and equipment to support 10,000 Vorix warriors. More importantly, it destroyed the psychological sense of safety the Vorix felt in their own territory. Over the following months, human raiders struck throughout Vorix space. They appeared without warning, hit critical targets, and vanished before reinforcements arrived. Shipyards burned. Communication relays went dark. Fuel depots exploded. The Vorix military structure, designed for conquering others, proved catastrophically vulnerable to this kind of warfare. Colonel Junho, commanding a special operations team, assassinated 3 regional Vorix commanders in coordinated strikes. Without clear leadership, entire sectors descended into chaos. Subordinate officers fought each other for succession, further weakening the empire. But the most important discovery came from Captain Jiwon herself. She intercepted Vorix communications about unrest on conquered worlds. The empire ruled over 847 systems, but many had been subjugated recently. These species still remembered freedom. Jiwon brought this information to diplomat Hana, who had been an ambassador before the war. Hana saw the opportunity immediately. We should contact these subjugated species. If they rise up while the Vorics are weakened, the Empire will collapse from within. The message Earth broadcast was simple and powerful. We were given the same ultimatum you received. Submit or die. We chose to fight. We defeated them. You can too, rise up. We will help you. The response exceeded all expectations. The Krellis, an insectoid species whose homeworld had been conquered 50 years ago, erupted in violent rebellion. Their warriors attacked Vorics garrisons using improvised weapons and guerrilla tactics learned from human broadcasts. The Thulian mining colonies sabotaged ore shipments, causing resource shortages across the Empire. The Vasilians, aquatic beings forced into labor, flooded Vorics processing plants. Suddenly, the Vorics Empire was fighting 100 wars simultaneously across their territory. Humanity provided weapons, tactical advice, and coordination. Major Hyojin personally trained Krellis insurgents in asymmetric warfare. She taught them everything humans had learned fighting the Vorics: hit and run, sabotage, psychological warfare, make the enemy afraid. Together, human forces and Krellis rebels assaulted a Vorics fortress world. The battle lasted 3 weeks and ended in victory. For 3,000 years, the Vorics had been unchallengeable masters. Now their former slaves were defeating them with human support. The myth of Vorics' invincibility shattered completely. Admiral Jiwan's fleet, now reinforced by ships from liberated worlds, pushed deeper into Vorics territory. Their objective was Vorics Prime itself, the throne world, the heart of the Empire. Emperor Draxus watched his empire crumble with growing desperation. Rebellion spread faster than his forces could suppress it. Human raiders struck at will throughout his territory. His military commanders reported constant defeats. The situation was impossible. In a final desperate move, he ordered the activation of ancient defensive systems surrounding Vorics Prime. These weapons had not been used in millennia. Some were so old that even Vorics engineers did not fully understand them, but Draxus had no choice. He activated everything. The defenses around Vorics Prime were formidable. Orbital platforms bristling with weapons, automated defense satellites, energy shields powerful enough to deflect asteroids. Any conventional assault would be suicide. But humanity did not conduct conventional assaults. Lieutenant Yuna, now promoted to full commander, orchestrated something far more insidious. Instead of attacking the defenses directly, they attacked the infrastructure that supported them. Human cyber warfare specialists, trained by Dr. Seogen's team, infiltrated Vorics Prime's computer networks. They did not shut down systems immediately. Instead, they planted corrupted code that would activate slowly over time. A delayed poison for the Empire's nervous system. Power grids began experiencing cascading failures. Communication networks developed mysterious glitches. Traffic control systems malfunctioned, causing accidents throughout the city. Food distribution broke down. Water purification plants failed. Climate control and habitats went offline. The Vorics military could defend against fleets and armies. They had no defense against their own infrastructure turning against them. Within 3 weeks, Vorics Prime descended into chaos. The planet was not conquered by invasion. It was dismantled from within. Emperor Draxus watched from his palace as his civilization collapsed. Riots erupted in the streets. Military units deserted. Government officials fled. The empire that had stood for 3,000 years was falling apart, and he was powerless to stop it. He finally understood what had happened. The humans had not just defeated him militarily. They had shown every conquered species in his empire that resistance was possible. They had turned his own systems against him. They had destroyed the myth that made the empire strong. The Vorics were no longer feared. They were pitied. Admiral G1 stood on the bridge of her flagship watching Vorics Prime burn. Not from bombardment, but from internal collapse. She felt no joy in the victory. Only a grim satisfaction that the threat to humanity was finally eliminated. "We have won," Commander Taeyang said quietly beside her. "The Vorics Empire is finished." "Yes," Jiwan agreed. "But what have we become in the process?" She looked at the reports of death and destruction. Millions of Voric civilians were dying from infrastructure collapse, starvation, disease, violence. The same tactics humanity had used against their military were now killing innocents. Taeyang had no answer. They had done what was necessary to survive. They had taken the fight to their enemy and won completely. But the victory felt hollow. They had become the thing they feared. They had become the monsters. On Earth, President Hyunwoo received reports from across the galaxy. Hundreds of species were watching humanity with a mixture of gratitude and fear. The Vorix Empire had fallen. The conquered species were free. But now there was a new power in the galaxy. A power that had demonstrated it would do absolutely anything to win. Some species sent messages of thanks. Others sent messages asking for protection. Still others sent nothing, clearly afraid that humanity might turn on them next. Earth had defeated the greatest empire in known space, but in doing so, they had become the most feared military force in the galaxy. General Minji stood in the command center, looking at the strategic map. Red icons showed human forces spread across former Vorix territory. Green icons showed allied species. But there were also yellow icons. Neutral species that were watching and waiting, trying to decide if humans were saviors or the next threat. We need to decide what kind of power we want to be, she told the council. The Vorix ruled through fear and force. We defeated them using the same methods. But now we have a choice. Do we continue on this path, or do we try to build something better? Lieutenant Yuna, the architect of humanity's most ruthless strategies, spoke up. We did what was necessary to survive, but survival is not the same as living. We have proven we can destroy. Now we must prove we can build. President Hyunwoo nodded slowly. 5 years had passed since the fall of the Vorix Empire. Earth had transformed from an isolated world into the center of a new galactic alliance. 200 species had joined what they called the Terran Coalition. It was united not by conquest but by mutual defense and cooperation. President Hana, who had been Ambassador Hana during the war, now led this coalition. She had learned diplomacy in the crucible of conflict and carried those lessons forward. Her philosophy was simple: strength through diversity. We are not conquerors, she told the coalition assembly. We are survivors who learned that survival means cooperation. Every species here brings something unique. Together we are stronger than any empire could ever be. But the war had left scars that time could not fully heal. The space-time anomaly created by the Cascade device remained a constant reminder of the price humanity had paid for victory. Physicist Nari had dedicated her life to studying and containing it. She worked alongside Dr. Zeliax, a Vorix scientist who had defected during the final days of the Empire. Together they represented an impossible partnership. Human and Vorix, former enemies, now collaborating to prevent the anomaly from expanding. The mathematics are clear, Nari explained to the Coalition Science Council. If we do not stabilize the anomaly, it will grow. Eventually, it could consume the entire solar system and spread beyond. We have decades, perhaps less. The solution required resources and knowledge from dozens of species. It became a symbol of the new era. Humans could not fix their own mistake alone. They needed help. And remarkably, that help came willingly. After 3 years of intensive work, they succeeded. The containment field surrounding the anomaly stabilized it completely. The scar in space-time would remain forever, but it would not grow. Admiral Ji-won oversaw the construction of a memorial station around the anomaly. Let this place remind us, Ji-won said at the dedication ceremony. Remind us of what we lost. Remind us of what we became, and remind us never to create such weapons again. The Vorix species had undergone its own transformation. Without their empire, they were forced to question everything about their culture. A new generation, led by Crown Prince Valeth, advocated for radical change. Valeth was Emperor Draxus's son, but he rejected everything his father had believed. We measured ourselves by the civilizations we destroyed, he told his people. We built our identity on conquest and domination. But that path led only to ruin. We must find a new way. Not all Vorix accepted this transformation. A hardliner faction called the Old Blood attempted a coup to restore the empire. They believed the warrior culture was sacred, and that Valeth was betraying their ancestors. Commander Taeyang, now in charge of coalition security, coordinated with Vorix reformists to stop the rebellion. Human soldiers fought alongside Vorix soldiers to preserve peace. It was strange and uncomfortable. These were the same beings who had tried to exterminate humanity just years before. Taeyang met with Valeth after the coup was defeated. The young Vorix prince looked exhausted but determined. My people do not understand yet. They think I am weak for accepting cooperation over conquest, but you showed us there is another kind of strength, the strength to change. Change is harder than war, Taeyang agreed. In war you just need to survive. In peace, you need to become better than you were. That requires real courage. Back on Earth, the war's psychological toll continued to affect those who had fought. Private Soman, one of the few survivors from the Battle of Mars, struggled with nightmares and guilt. She had killed so many Vorik soldiers. She had watched her friends die. And for what? So she could live in a galaxy that now included the same species that had tried to kill her. She attended therapy sessions with other veterans. The counselor was patient and understanding. You did what was necessary to survive. That does not make you a monster. It makes you human. The real question is what you choose to do now. Selman eventually found purpose in advocacy work. She traveled to former Vorix worlds, speaking to civilians about the cost of war. She told them about Mars, about the soldiers who died defending the evacuation routes, about the price of every day of resistance. War is not glorious, she told audiences. It is necessary sometimes, but never glorious. Every life lost on both sides is a tragedy. We must remember them all, not just the ones who fought for our side. Her most controversial act was supporting the construction of a memorial on Mars that listed casualties from both sides. Many humans were outraged. Why should we memorialize the enemy? They demanded. Salman's response was simple and powerful. They came as conquerors. We fought as survivors. In the end, we were all just people who wanted to live. If we only remember our own dead, we forget that war's true cost is measured in individual lives, not strategic objectives. Colonel Junho, who had resigned from the military in protest over the lenient treaty terms, visited the memorial. He stood before the lists of names, human and Vorix together, and felt his anger crumble. He had wanted revenge. He had wanted the Vorix to suffer as humanity had suffered. But looking at thousands of names, he felt only exhaustion. These Vorix soldiers had not chosen their empire's policies. They had followed orders just like human soldiers. They had died far from home just like humans. They had probably been afraid just like humans. Salman found him there, tears running down his weathered face. I still hate them sometimes, Junho admitted. I remember what they did, what they tried to do, but I'm so tired of hating. Then stop, Somin said gently. We fought so we could have the choice to move forward. Take that choice. General Minji had retired from active service and spent her time writing. Her memoir, The Price of Survival, became required reading across the galaxy. She did not shy away from the moral implications of humanity's tactics. She documented every atrocity, every sacrifice, every line crossed. Her final chapter posed the central question. Were we right to do what we did? I do not have an answer, but I know we are still here to ask the question. That means something. Whether it means enough, history will judge. Lieutenant Commander Yuna, now a professor at the Galactic Strategic Academy, taught the next generation. Her courses attracted students from dozens of species. Vorix warriors studied alongside humans, learning from their former enemies. She co-taught with General Korthan, a Vorix officer who had fought against humanity. Together, they provided both perspectives on the war. It was uncomfortable but necessary. Winning at any cost is not winning, Yuna told her students. It is just surviving. True victory is when you can look at yourself afterward and still recognize who you are. That is the lesson we learned. That is the lesson you must remember. Dr. Seojin had dismantled Project Prometheus completely. Every weapon, every research file, every terrible thing they had created was destroyed. He established an ethics committee that included representatives from every coalition species. Science should serve life, not end it, he told the committee at its first meeting. We created things that should never exist. I will spend the rest of my life ensuring they stay destroyed and that nothing like them is ever created again. But peace, as it turned out, was fragile. Ambassador Jiwon received a disturbing report from a distant monitoring station. Strange energy signatures were detected at the edge of known space. They did not match any technology the Coalition had encountered. Not human, not Vorix, not any known species. Admiral Bora led an expedition to investigate. What they found changed everything. Ancient ruins on a dead world, technology far more advanced than anything the Coalition possessed, and a warning inscribed in mathematical language that any civilization would understand. We were the first. We will be the last. All others will join us or join the void. The message was millions of years old, but the threat was clear. Somewhere in the galaxy, something ancient and powerful was waiting, and it was coming. President Hana called an emergency session of the Coalition Council. Representatives from 200 species gathered. Humans and Vorik sat side by side, former enemies now united by a common threat. We thought the Voriks were the greatest threat we would face, Hana said. We were wrong, but we survived because we adapted. We sacrificed. We learned. Whatever is coming, we will face it together, not as separate species, but as one unified coalition. Emperor Draxus attended the session. He was old now, living in quiet retirement, but Hana had invited him to speak. He stood slowly, his massive form still imposing despite his age. My empire tried to conquer you, he said. You taught us there was another way. You forced us to become more than we were. I hated you for that. I still do sometimes. But I also respect you, and I will fight beside you now. Not as emperor, but as an ally. The council erupted in discussion. Species that had been enemies for centuries agreed to work together. The Vorik's threat had united them, but now they had a new purpose. Preparing for whatever ancient evil was approaching. Later, Jiwan met privately with Draxus. They sat in silence, two old warriors who understood each other better than most. Finally, Jiwan spoke. Do you think we are ready for what is coming? Draxus considered carefully. The Voriks were not ready for humanity. This new threat will not be ready for what we have become together. You taught the galaxy a new kind of strength. Cooperation, adaptation, survival at any cost.